Hello. Good night, my friends. John and I are back again. And as we promised, we are going to continue our discussions, or rather, arguments on
relationships.
say that.
Relationships part 2. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
relationships part 2. And as we've established in our first segment, there's so many different facets, so many different aspects, so many different types of relationships. And so tonight, we wanted to pick up where we left off. And since John is an expert on everything,
Yes.
I will have John take over.
It's actually much easier to discuss things I'm not an expert on, as opposed to things that I am an expert on, because it's much smaller.
Thing that you're not an expert on?
Yes.
Based on what I know of you, John.
Actually, most of your areas of expertise are things I'm not an expert on at all.
Well,
and as we know, you're an expert in virtually everything, and you make that very clear almost every time we speak, which is why I practically can't stand being with you. Speaking of which, you know that podcast, you sent me a podcast the other day that you did with some venture capitalist guy.
Jon Jen.
Whatever.
He's a very
big shot, Jon Jen. Yeah, confident. I don't care about any of that. You know what I noticed? Yeah, you changed the word. Okay, wonderful. You know what I noticed about that podcast? Your level of excitement to have a conversation with this guy. It was as if this guy was the Messiah. I have never seen you a quarter of a percent as excited to speak to me as you were with him. I want to know, how do I obtain that level of enthusiasm from you? Because I'm so embarrassed that you've lowered your standards like into the ground, going from like the heights of the universe with Mr. Sean Flynn, venture capitalist du jour, to like white trash piece of garbage that you found in the street, and thought maybe you can get a couple of podcasts out.
You forgot one adjective.
Oh God, go ahead.
Jewish.
Oh yes, which makes it even worse for you. Anyways, so yeah, let's talk about relationship. By the way, I don't know, Jenny, if you want to share with the listeners about the events of today, how we almost were not able to do this podcast today due to your minor medical mishap. You want to talk about that, or is that off limits? Is that a HIPAA thing?
Put everything out there, but
is it a HIPAA thing I can't talk about?
We can talk about it.
Okay.
So on November 30th, I was involved in a car accident. Long Beach roads are the pits. They're dark. I was caught in a rainstorm. I couldn't tell where the lanes were. I mean, in California.
Wait, can I just reframe that for a second?
No.
You're just a horrible driver. It has nothing to do with the weather, nothing to do with the night, the day. You just can't drive. I've seen you on the road. You're driving over curbs, or your rims have all the nicks all over it, like this car just also like came out of a junkyard or something. What you did to that beautiful piece of German machinery is embarrassing. You should be, you're not even worthy of that car. I should take it away from you and give it to a rightful owner.
So for those of you who are listening, I have not been involved in any car accidents. I have a clean record. I've moved here. There are streets. You can't tell the lanes because there are no definite, or there's nothing that tells you this is the lane.
Oh, other than that giant white line in the middle? That means nothing, right?
White line. You have to guess where you're going.
Okay.
In California, that John knocks all the time, we have little bumps on the road. So when we are leaving our lane, you start bumping, and you know something is wrong, and you can pull yourself back in your lane. I was driving home in a rainstorm. It was pitch dark. My navigation told me to go right. I don't know the streets here, so I depend on my...
How do I fast forward this story? Can we just get to the bottom line is what?
The bottom line is my navigation told me to go right. I looked up on
the bottom line of what happened to you today. Nobody gives a rat's ass about what led up to the medical event of today. We don't need the background story.
Anyway.
Here's what happened. You were in the emergency room today. That's what happened, okay? That's all that matters, because... all of a sudden I get a text. I'm going to the doctor. Okay. Jenny, what happened? I don't know. I have this thing, I don't know, on my neck. It's a tumor, a lymph node, it's a brain cancer, whatever it is. You call your doctor says, no, quickly go to the emergency room. Next thing you know, you're in the emergency room waiting for an MRI, and one thing leads to another. And you come, go ahead, tell them what happened in the emergency room.
My doctor told me, since I have a lump on the back of my neck, and I'm seeing blurry, and my head is hurting, and I'm nauseated, that I probably have concussion from the accident, and I should probably get an MRI. I go to the hospital.
And you don't get the MRI and you leave. That was brilliant.
No, the doctor was able to figure out that I didn't need it, and I didn't want it. I hate MRIs. And so John happened to see me after I left the doctor, and I had all these bandages and a blood pressure cuff and something attached to my finger so they could take my blood pressure. And he thought I was being dramatic. Do you believe?
This was what we call a clear-cut sympathy play. Okay, when you come out with all the wristbands and the armband and you're in the medical gown and the IVs are still attached to you, you're dragging like 6 feet worth of hoses and tubes. Don't tell me you practically looked like you were on a ventilator. Okay, so don't tell me this wasn't drama. Okay, you could have cleaned yourself up and walked out like a normal person. Hey, what the hell does this have to do with relationships anyway?
Been in an emergency room?
No. Oh, yes. Yeah, I did. I got a monoclonal antibody treatment when I had COVID. I did.
So if you've ever been in a New York emergency room, it's a zoo. It's like being a JFK. I walked in here today and I was like, oh my God, I am on Star Trek, the 5th generation. I'm somewhere in space and I don't know if I should be here.
Well,
I got there. I was there for at least 5.5 hours. I think I had everything done to me under the sun. And I think I picked up a whole bunch of diseases just sitting in that waiting room for 5 hours.
Are you soliciting contributions from the listeners, like towards your medical cause or something like that? There's a lot of buildup here.
This relationship up. So we're talking
So
about
let's get to the bottom line is, so she comes back from out of the emergency room and the first thing she says is, oh, I'm doing an interview with one of the doctors on a podcast. So what do you go in like with fake medical emergencies just to get interviews with doctors? I mean, how low do you have to stoop to do that? What the hell does that have to do with relationships? It has nothing with the topic. I want to tell you a quick, I was thinking today because I knew we were going to be talking about relationships. I had a quick funny story that I wanted to share with you, at least something that I thought was funny, talking about relationships. So are you not interested in anything I'm saying? So why are you yawning?
I am not yawning. Don't project.
I saw you yawning.
You can't help yourself.
So I'm in college.
Projector.
I'm 18 years old, 17 years old, 18 years old. I'm in college, right? And I'm in the business program in Queens College in New York. And, single, whatever. And obviously 17, 18 years old, got a really cool car. And I'm looking for a girlfriend. So my strategy always was, and again, this ties into relationships. Whenever I go into a class, first day of class, I'd scan around the room, look for who I thought was the most attractive girl. And I would clearly just go and sit next to them. Because once you're next to them already, you're in like pole position to begin communication. Like we're neighbors. I'm next to you, you're next to me. We could talk, we could chat a little bit. So I always had this.
Such a schemer, you can't help yourself.
Well, who's that? Your next guest on the next podcast? They have to bother you while we're communicating. I can't even have my own 45 minutes.
Turning my phone.
Can I have my own 45 minutes, like a blackout period, please? Anyways, so I come in. I always had this thing for, well, I guess they're called African American girls, black girls. When I was a teenager, I always loved black girls. And they always seem to have liked me. I don't know why. So I see this.
I don't know why either, John.
Well, you're not black. You're not black. Oh, wait, anyone likes me. So I see this beautiful black girl. Her name was Natasha. And I go and I sit next to her. Sure enough, by like day number 3, 4, we're talking. And that was, of course, before cell phones, no texting.
You never stop scheming.
Everything's done in person. And so we're talking and we make plans to go out and everything. And, we go out for dinner. We go out for, a couple of dates, activities, whatever. And then she says, maybe you want to come to my house. And I said, well, where do you live? And it turns out, first of all, again, she's beautiful, great body, like everything. And she goes, oh, I live in Old Brookville. Now, if you're not familiar with Old Brookville, Long Island, it's one of the most exclusive neighborhoods on Long Island. It's like 10, $20 million houses. So I'm like, oh my God, did I strike it rich here? She's beautiful. She's got a great body. She's wealthy. I mean, this is ridiculous. What is God giving me here? So I'm like, yeah, sure. I'd love to come over. So we make plans. I'm driving over to her house. I'm driving through this neighborhood that's like, knock your socks off, gorgeous mansions and everything. You can't even see the houses from the street. And so I get to the house, I look at the address, and I'm like, I'm really taken aback. I'm driving up about a half mile up a driveway just to get to this house. And this beautiful giant brick house, these giant white columns in front like that. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is it. So I knock on the door, and this white woman answers the door. And I'm like, they are so rich, they even have a white housekeeper. Like, this is crazy. And I'm like, oh, it's Natasha.
Judgments of it in certain.
Oh, loaded with judgments. It's all about judgments. I was 17.
So much to
I was 17, 17 years
I
old.
hope you've evolved out
I
there.
absolutely have
Okay,
not.
Let's
So-
continue with the story.
So I knock on the door, the white woman answers, and I'm like, oh my God, is Natasha home? And she's like, yes, absolutely. I'm like, oh, great. She goes, she's down the road on the property at that little cottage down there. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, the caretaker of the property, that's his daughter. And I'm like, deflated in 1 second. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in regard to relationships, the way we view people sometimes is in the context that they're in. So like you see someone driving who's in a really expensive car, you draw a certain conclusion. You see someone driving in a cheap car, you draw a different conclusion. You see someone in this house or in that house, you draw a different conclusion.
So what's the lesson?
The lesson is not to judge, and you
Thank
judge
you.
people based on who they are as individual people, not the circumstances that their life is in.
Exactly.
And that, see, talk about evolving. That's how I evolved. Because now when I look at someone and driving a nice car, I go, you know what? They have a nice car. They may have nothing else. And then I look at the person driving the crappy car and go, they may be smart with their money, not want to waste money on cars. So that's the evolution that I came to. So the answer is yes, I did evolve. You were thinking I didn't.
Well, based on what I know of you,
What do you know? What?
I question what you're saying. But
Yes. I thought that was a very mature, evolving process that I came to. And it took a lot of years to really fully understand that.
Mhm.
And you know one of the ways I came to that conclusion is because let's say in my my regular profession, we're dealing with people with money, and you come across people that you think have nothing, and it turns out they have a fortune, and then you come across people that you think have a fortune, turns out they have nothing. And it's just a matter of people's personalities and their values of what and how they use their money and for what. And it's actually a very interesting life lesson. Is there something you'd like to add to that?
No, I'm listening to you and I'm evaluating what I know of you.
And
I'm trying to compare it to what you're saying. And I guess I don't know you well enough to know if you really have evolved.
well, I just spent 10 minutes explaining how I evolved.
But
What do
you
you mean?
can say one thing.
No, that's the truth. That's the absolute truth, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, no. You know what?
Well, kudos to you that you've evolved.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's very nice of you. Why are you looking at me like that? What are you staring at? You're making me really self-conscious. Did you stare at Sean like that?
Yeah, I stared at John exactly the same, but there's a
No.
huge difference.
Oh, yeah, I know the difference. There was a look of love in your eyes when you're staring at Sean. With me, I get a look of disgust and judgment. Like,
Of course.
just get out of the studio already. Why are you even here?
Anyway, let's continue the conversation.
Relationships.
So, John, today you took something. I could have been dying. I had a huge lump behind my head after this car accident.
It was like a pin-sized nothing.
And you sat there
Yeah.
and took my experience that I could have been dying.
Yes. But you might still be. We don't know that you're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're making fun of it.
No, I was very honest with you. I said, look, this could be a brain tumor. You're having blurred vision. You're having headaches. You have a lump on your neck. You're fucked. And I'm just happy I'm not you. That's what I was saying. I mean, I think a level of honesty should be see, that's part of our relationship, right? Because don't you want someone that's going to give you the truth, or you want to sit there and be like, oh no, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. And then 6 months later, you're dead. I mean, what do you prefer?
John, I'm not dying anytime soon. I hate to pop your bubble.
It's not in your,
No,
that's
no.
not in your control, by the way.
God has a lot for me to do.
I have a funny thing I want to tell you.
I used to change you.
Did I just break the?
No,
Okay.
everything.
So we're talking about relationships.
Banter.
If you only heard the raw material before the editing. So we're talking about one other thing, relationships, teachers and students. Teacher and students.
Tell us.
Okay. So I was not a very well-behaved
Do we need to hear you say this? I think everybody knows.
okay, as a teenager and as a kid, I was very rebellious. So I had this one teacher talk about how relationships between students and teachers, it's actually really important to your character formation as you're growing, because other than your parents, who has the most influence on you? It's the people that spend the most time with you, which is really, as adults, would be teachers, right? Do you disagree with that? Do you agree with it or disagree with it? Or do you not have an opinion?
No.
Okay, fine. So let's just wheel your chair out. I don't even need you to do this. Anyway, so in regard to this teacher, I went to a private school, and this was a rabbi. His name was, I'll never forget, his name was Rabbi Altusky. Miserable son of a bitch, like 85 years old. And he says to me one day, I was really misbehaving, because what I used to do, the teacher would be sitting at his desk facing the class, right? Like, let's say I'm sitting here and the class is over here. I would stand next to him, like over here. And what I would do is I would slowly climb the blackboard behind until my position was like this. My legs were all the way on top, and I was sitting there talking to him like this. He had no idea that I was literally upside down, but the rest of the class would be hysterical laughing. And I would hold that position until he would notice. So he caught a glimpse of my legs, and he freaked out. And he goes, "Listen," in this like raspy voice, he goes, "Do me a favor, sit near the radiator." And I go, "Why should I sit near the radiator?" He goes, "I want you to see what it's like to burn in hell." I'm a 12-year-old kid. Who says that to somebody? He wanted me to get a feel what it's like to burn in hell, to sit near the radiator.
Somebody who had to teach you, John. I completely get why.
I never forgot that story.
John, you are capable of making anyone say things that they probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because you, as they say, could frustrate the devil.
These days, comments like that wouldn't be tolerated. You know, like
get written up and taken.
Right. Instead, the rest of the class was cheering for him. But by the way, speaking of teacher-student relationship, so that's part. I mean, at least I view. You may have. You have. I'm sure a different perspective than me. But these days, when it comes to teachers and students.
How do you know my views about this?
I'm just assuming they're opposite of mine.
You are constantly making assumptions.
Is that not a fair assumption that it's an opposite of mine? I think it's a pretty reasonable basis to start from, no?
So just so you guys know, the reason that John and I do this is we sit on complete opposites of the fence on everything. If we agreed on one thing, I think it would be a miracle. If I think left, John thinks right, and he holds his stand as well as I do mine.
Yes.
And so
I tend to be more right than you, though, I think.
He's always right.
No, I was implying right politically. I wasn't implying right or wrong.
Right. Your right side is the right side.
Most of the time. Not always. I have been wrong.
And I've always, and I'm not, no.
No, back in the 80s, it was like 1 or 2 times that I was wrong. Oh, I totally forgot. I was supposed to send regards to someone. There's a very loyal listener to all of our podcasts, a very close friend of mine. His name is Mark. His son, Aby, who I love. I hate other people's kids for the most part, but I promised Aby I would give him a shout out on the next podcast. I just want to say hi to my really good. He's like an adopted nephew almost.
Hi, Aby.
Hey, Aby. Okay, sorry. Well, I had to get that in before I forgot.
I am really sorry for you that John is your uncle. Hopefully, he's not going to influence your life in any way.
But by the way, I could call my friend Mark right now. He'll confirm that Rabbi Altusky story about burning in hell. Okay, let's see if I get him on the phone.
You know, John, it takes a really big heart to love you.
It's huge.
So if those people love you, they're special.
Let's see if he answers. Hold on.
Karen is a queen. She's an angel.
Mark.
Whoa.
Mark.
What's up? What's up?
Listen, you're live on the podcast. I'm sitting here with Jenny, and
Hi, how are you?
We were just talking.
Get your patience to deal with Jonathan.
I just put my daughter to bed. She's 3 years old. I literally just walked out of her room.
I just have to ask you a quick question.
What is it?
Rabbi Altusky, 7th grade, when he told me to sit near the radiator, what did he say?
That's a hard one. I know he was a feeble person that we took advantage of.
Remember, it had to do with where I would end up in the afterlife.
I'm not sure exactly of
Oh
the
my God.
terminology.
When he told me that I should sit near the radiator so that I could feel what it's like to burn in hell.
Probably because at that point we were 11, and I think everyone knows how old you are. It's 39 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
That's a hard memory to recollect. Anything else, it's easy.
Well,
Mark, you sound normal. I hope I meet you one day soon.
I am normal. I'm actually exactly like John, just a little nicer.
John is not normal.
well, Mark knows things about Mark knows things about me that nobody else knows. Unfortunately, he's told most of them to my children. All right, listen, Mark, I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
So is Mark your friend that you went to school with, your close friend?
He was my closest friend since first grade. Yeah.
But he clearly doesn't remember all your pranks.
He remembers things that I have no recollection of. It's amazing. He actually has a great memory. So relationships, and I think I mentioned this once before in regard to people that you grow up with and that you know from childhood and the connection that you have with them versus people that you meet in the adult life. And I think I mentioned, I don't mean to be repetitive, but I always feel like I have such a closer bond with people like that than people that I meet during adulthood. Like you and I met during adulthood, so like there's virtually no connection. But people like Mark and the wedding I was at last night and stuff like that, these people that go back to childhood that I just feel like this tremendous bond and connection with. You can never have that with me. Did you hear what I said? You can never have that with me. Ever.
Because
you understand that, right?
Of course.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Because people like you don't make that indelible mark in my life, John. We got that.
That is so insulting.
We do the podcast thing, and that's enough for me. We couldn't do anything else.
Wow.
So, John.
Hurtful. Yes.
Your friend sounds a little annoyed that we're disturbing him.
Well, so Mark was married and had a son, this kid, Abby, who I love. And then they got divorced because she was a nut job, and he got remarried and just had a daughter maybe like 3 years ago with the new wife. So he was putting his daughter to sleep. So the guy's 50 years old and he's got like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old now. It's like, my oldest is 24. I could have grandchildren the age of his daughter. So we're just at like a little bit different stages. I don't think he was annoyed. He was just, coming out of the room, putting his daughter to sleep. He wasn't expecting to be like, you love the podcast. He was coming out of a dark, quiet room is my guess. You would love Mark. He's very entertaining, but I could never have him meet you ever.
No, but why not?
Oh, because the things he would tell you about me, you'd be horrified.
I don't think he'd tell me anything I haven't already figured out.
Oh, no, believe me.
Jonathan, you are slightly transparent.
Well, the part that's not transparent is the scary part. I have a cousin who I work with, and I'll never forget also, he was also divorced, and he was dating the girl who he's married to now. And she said to me one time, he's off the wall. He's insane. You know.
More than you?
Oh, no, he's gone. You know what I'm talking about. Okay. So I remember when they were dating and they were contemplating getting engaged, she said to me, she came over to my house one time. She's like, we'll use his real name. His name is Steven. And she goes to me, your cousin Steven's great, but he's a little crazy. And I go, how crazy do you think he is? She goes, oh, no, I think he's pretty crazy. I go, let's equate this to like traveling on an airplane. You've seen the carry-on luggage crazy. You haven't seen the checked luggage crazy. Now that we all know the difference between a carry-on, which is like a small little bag, and the checked luggage, which is the big suitcase. Oh, she ultimately found out about the big suitcase of crazy.
But she married him anyway.
Well, she found out a little bit too late. But I warned her, and I tell her all the time that I warned you. Yeah, that's it. That's also, that's an interesting dynamic also, but I don't think that would have to be its own segment. Marriage is a big one. And you have some experience with marriages also
No, I don't.
As a name collector, a last name collector.
I'm not even going to hit you in the studio. Don't hear me on camera.
Don't hit me. I'm very fragile.
So here's one thing I can tell you guys about relationships. Be careful who you share your personal information with.
Oh, yeah.
It might come back in your face 100 times a day.
That is true.
As it does with John.
No.
You share something with John in confidence, expect it to hit you in the face like a bat one day.
It's not confidence that you're divorced. I mean, it's not like, what's so secretive about that? When you have
Anyway.
18 different last names, obviously you've
Anyway.
collected them from marriages.
Friends.
That's gonna be edited out.
Relationships. Pick better than I picked John. Will you please. Because he is really on a slippery slope off the friendship list.
You know,
He just does not know it.
so we talk. Can you stop getting off topic? We're talking about. So I broke my cardinal rule. You know, we had talked about friends in a past segment, talking about how, you know, I get horrified when I get invited to weddings and stuff like that. So I broke my cardinal rule, and last night I was at a wedding on a Monday night in the Bronx. We're talking about marriage, and you know, he said to me, he goes, well, I probably shouldn't overshare, but let's keep it kind of generic. So he's talking about how when he met his wife, how you think somebody's a certain way, but then once you're married to them, and after, you know, time goes by, they start to become a lot of times who they really are. Am I boring you? You seem like I'm really boring you. Are you okay? Is your concussion
No,
like?
I'm like a sponge. I'm soaking it all
You
up.
sure you're not just concussed?
Please continue with
Okay.
your story.
So we're talking about, and he said to me, he goes, you know, he goes, what happened was when we're first dating and stuff, we got engaged. My wife is very, very affectionate. And he goes, and as the years went by, he goes, she became a lot less affectionate. And I said to him, I said, you know, he goes, that she's really showing like what her true personality is. And we're talking about that. And I said, you know, if in fact that is her true personality, I said, she would be unaffectionate with anybody. It's not you that she's being unaffectionate towards. And he actually felt much better after we had that conversation.
What could anybody do with
And he
that?
said to me, he goes, you know, where are you going? and he said to me, he goes,
You're gonna make me have too much.
and he said to me, he goes, you know, when you're in a marriage and you're not getting everything that you need and you feel like something's missing, he goes, I really feel like I feel vulnerable that I can meet someone else and my marriage could fall apart. And I felt really, really bad. And when you're talking about marriages, it's really important to make sure that you're on the same page and that you're always feeling that chemistry and still have that connection. Otherwise, marriages can disintegrate and they can go away and they can fall apart. And that's
Can be a jerk and just cheat and have an affair.
they can do that too. And that happens quite frequently, but it happens from the wife's side also.
Yeah, you know.
In fact,
Why do people cheat?
well, I think, by the way,
This is a great topic.
oh, that is a good topic. And I think we should dedicate a whole segment to that, but we can start now.
Yeah, okay.
So I think when I looked at the statistics last, I think they said that at this point in time now, in the 2020 timeframe, that it's actually more women that have been cheating on their husbands than men cheating on their wives.
Here's my
It used to be the other way around, but yeah.
my opinion is, unless you're an awful person and you don't really care about your partner, if you're cheating, is because there's something missing in your life, something that you need as a person that you're not getting in that marriage.
Exactly what I just said about my friend.
And so many.
Did you hear what I said about my friend before?
Yes, I did.
He said he's
So-
missing that affection. Yeah, he's missing. You confirmed that, yes.
Do people have been married for a long time? After a while, and this is not true of everyone. I
No.
know it's not true of you, John.
No.
I know that you're happily married and everything is wonderful and perfect in your marriage.
Yes.
But there are other marriages where people.
Well, I wouldn't say everything is perfect. Everybody has. I mean, let's not.
Perfect. And sorry,
Since when do you live in my house?
because I can tell.
I mean, it's near, let's say near perfect, but not perfect. I mean, everybody has.
Anyway, here's what I think, without your interruptions, John, so I don't lose my thought. I believe that after a while, you become like brother and sister. The butterflies go away. And this does not include you. This is just talking
I understand.
about
I wasn't
the
taking it personally.
status quo.
Yeah.
And so if you're someone who's into like the butterfly thing and you start missing.
Romance, even.
You miss the romance, and so you know, sometimes life will bring us the things we're missing,
Right.
but we're not looking for them. And you have to be very strong to turn a blind eye to it. Or you can go down that road. And there's some women who sell themselves short
In what regard?
and compromise and will fit the bill.
You mean
And-
compromise their values?
Well, look, I don't want to judge, but this is how it appears. they become entangled
Mm.
and they put their own values and boundaries aside
Mm.
and they get wrapped up in
And things they shouldn't get wrapped up in.
relationships where they're like the bimbo or the other one.
Well, they can extract themselves if they want. Nobody, I mean,
Well,
I don't know. I don't know.
you have to be very strong to be able to do that.
I mean, is it strength or I don't know what it.
Well, I think emotions are a weird thing.
Mm.
When you get wrapped up with someone or when you like connect with someone, first of all, for me personally, I speak for Jennylyn right now.
Mm.
In order for me to be emotionally entangled with someone, that person has to really like hit all the right. I don't want to call them notes, but this person really has to connect with me.
Right.
And I have had a difficult time doing that with a lot of people.
Why?
Because I think that I've done a lot of work on myself. I'm spiritually evolved.
Yeah.
I know what I want, and I don't want to settle for less. I'm not judging anyone, but a majority of the people that I meet and
Right.
just don't click like that. But some women, they can't live without sex.
Right.
They can't live without somebody loving them. Whatever it is, the need that they have. And they may come across one of these men or women who are married but unhappy and they have the same need.
So the woman is vulnerable, let's say.
She's vulnerable.
Mm.
And unless you're very strong, can easily get suckered into a relationship.
Well, there's a lot of men, I'm sure, that prey on that
listen,
vulnerability also.
Places
Mm.
where the people meet and he has his void and she has her need. The next thing you know, they click. And these things start off very innocently.
Right.
And people don't realize, like, I think of it like a plant.
Sounds like this is why you left California.
No, I didn't have any work romances with anyone in California. But what I can tell you, it's like a plant. If you have a seed in the dirt and you never add water and sunshine, it stays a dead seed in the dirt. But if you give it water, you give it sunlight.
Photosynthesis. Yes. I remember that from science class.
A plant starts growing. If you keep giving it water, keep giving it sunlight, photosynthesis is occurring and it starts growing. And this is what happens. And pretty soon you have a tree, not the plant.
Mm.
And therein lies the problem.
Well, one of those two people should get a chainsaw and you cut that tree right down and goodbye. Done. You know, it takes a tree. It can take a tree like 40 years to grow. You ever watch
a tree grows in Brooklyn?
Tree grows in Brooklyn?
There's a book and a movie called A Tree Grows.
Oh, I don't read books. I don't know anything about books.
That.
And I barely watch movies. Unless it's a documentary.
Partner does not read books. Have you ever met anyone who doesn't read?
I'm practically illiterate. But this is the interesting thing. Think about this for a second. No, I'm serious. A tree could take 30, 40 years to grow to full size, right? Be a 50, 60-foot tree. And you get one of these tree cutting companies in, and in a half an hour, that entire tree is gone. And then they grind out the stump like the tree never even existed. It's actually fascinating how something could take so long to become something and get destroyed that quickly. You ever think about that?
I think about that, but it's just like a human.
Yes.
They're born as a baby and they live all these years and one day they have to die. Everything dies at some point.
How about the fact that you have
that is immortal?
God.
Thank you.
You have
Are you God?
God forbid. No.
I am not God.
I couldn't take on the responsibility of God. Do you know what kind of responsibility God has to run this world? I don't want any part of that. I could barely run my own life. I don't need to run everybody's life. You look like you're taking a nap.
No, I'm letting you speak, but I have to tell you that everything has a life cycle.
Yes.
Relationships,
including relationships, yeah.
People, everything. And so for me, my takeaway is make the best of it while you can. Because when the life cycle is over, it is done. And there isn't anything you can do. For example, I'm from the Silicon Valley. I watched Steve Jobs, one of the most powerful men in the Bay Area.
One of the most brilliant
sick,
also, yeah.
right? I don't know that he's necessarily one of the most brilliant, but he was brilliant. I
Well,
think
you talk about people that changed the world.
Steve Wozniak was the one behind building the chipboard and the computer.
But Steve Jobs
Steve
with the
Jobs-
iPhone, just with the iPhone alone, changed the world.
But did he make the iPhone, John?
I don't know the specifics.
Okay, good. Get that and then come back.
He
and
stole
let's
the
talk
idea
about
from
it.
someone else.
Didn't, but there were a lot of brains behind this.
Okay.
Anyway, it's not.
Then
good.
pancreatic cancer comes and goodbye.
And my point is, for all his power and all his fame and all his money, when that time came, his money couldn't save his life.
Correct.
And what I don't understand is when people are going to get this. Money is good for so much, but money cannot buy you immortality.
Correct.
So the point I think of my life is to make the best of it, to treat people the way I want to be treated, to not have affairs.
If I hear that motto one more time,
to not
to be treated the way I want to be treated. Yeah.
But what is so hard in that?
No, that's the motto in my house. I hear that all the time. That is my wife's motto. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
I say it all the time. I don't understand why that is so difficult. Why would you want to do something to someone that you couldn't handle if it's being done to you? Who the hell do you think you are? Some narcissistic?
Why are you directing this at me? I didn't say anything
I'm
wrong.
talking about anybody who feels it's okay to hurt people, but don't dare touch me.
That's correct. That's a bully. That's a
It's
bully.
Bully.
Yes.
And
we don't tolerate bullies on this show.
but not only that, people don't realize what you put out there is what you bring back to you.
In many cases, that is true. What they call that karma. Right.
Whatever title you want to give it, it's the law of the universe.
Right.
You want people to be nice to you, treat people the way you want those people to treat you.
Okay, then. I agree.
You can't plant an apple seed and go to pick oranges.
We are full of analogies today. Can I write these down?
No,
These are good.
no.
These are good. You can't plant an apple tree and expect to grow oranges. It's brilliant. Simple, but brilliant.
Brilliant, John.
Learning that every day. There's a lot of depth. A lot of depth to you.
So I think that it's a simple formula for a good life. Don't do the things to people that you don't want done to you.
Right.
Every day when you wake up, be grateful. Live in gratitude. Your relationships, have compassion for the people who piss you off.
Yeah.
It's not about you. It's about them. And what they're looking for is you to not respond in kind and to have some compassion for where they're at. It's hard, but it's really easy.
It is hard. And relationships are also, they disappear. I mean, you think about like relationships that I've had with my grandparents, for example. I was very close with all my grandparents. And, you know, at some point the grandparents pass away, they're out of the picture. And, you know, you want to be able to look back fondly and say that I maximized the enjoyment and the time that I was able to spend with that particular individual, whether it was a grandparent or a spouse or your kids or whatever. You're talking about how, you know, we're talking about the tree example, how it took all those years to grow, even for people, you know, with unfortunate accidents and things that happen. You know, you take a parent that spends all this time raising a child, you know, 10 years, 20 years, 30, whatever it is, and all the love that they give the child and the nourishment, emotional, physical, everything, and taking care of all the kids' needs. And then something terrible happens, whether it's a drug overdose or like I knew a kid one time drowned in a pool. 15 seconds underwater, no oxygen, kid's dead, with all this entire life of effort that was put into them. And in 15 seconds, gone. A car accident, things that are just horrible.
Maybe that's what it was supposed to be for that child.
Well, I guess from the parents' perspective, they take some solace in that, but it's still looked at. I mean, it would still be a tragedy. And we mentioned we were going to discuss when we were talking before we went on the air, talking about other topics. You had mentioned like the opioid crisis.
And education in America.
Yeah, I think those are
the chicken before the egg, or the egg before the chicken, and the toilet paper.
I was really hoping you weren't going to say the toilet paper one.
I have seen many forums where they discuss the toilet paper? Should it go under?
I don't care about other forums. We make our own forum. Okay, I'm
Okay.
not interested in other people's forums. We're creating our own forum.
Perspective on that.
On the toilet paper?
Yeah. Are you over or under?
What if I just use a bidet? I don't even need toilet paper.
Okay, but there are people that do. Do you have a perspective on the people?
No, I really don't. I'm gonna have to put some thought. I'm gonna put some deep thinking into that
Well,
one.
I have a definite opinion
I don't think anybody really cares about your opinion on that.
out there.
We're talking about there's a relationship between you and Scott's toilet paper. Do you use one ply or two ply? I'm just because one ply is the only safe one to use.
About relationships, John.
Oh, okay.
Save the toilet paper.
I have a relationship with one ply toilet paper because anything more than one ply will destroy the pipes in your house and clog it up, and it leads to disaster. But go ahead. Sorry.
Anyway, we have lots of exciting topics, or maybe you'll think they're stupid. But let's see what John and I can do with them. And hopefully we'll entertain you and we'll strike a chord and point out something that you may have been oblivious to. The whole point of this podcast is just to have fun and to discuss edgy topics humorously or serious topics humorously, because both John and I believe that life is short. We shouldn't take it too seriously. And we don't want this to be one of those stuffy podcasts where you're sitting bored to death. But we're not Howard Stern, and it's not sexual. We're somewhere in the middle.
Well, can I just say one thing? Having fun is one thing, but there is an aspect of taking life seriously. It's not all about just, of course you have to. The relationships in your life are the serious things, because without those relationships, if a person is just by themselves and have no connection to anybody else and have no relationships, they really have nothing. When you think about it, whether it's your children, your parents, your grandparents, your close friends, whatever it is, that is what comprises of the happiness in most people's lives. So if you take that out of the picture, what do you really have? So cherish those relationships and enjoy them and spend time on them, because it's worth it.
And we hope you're enjoying this podcast where we're discussing relationships. And if you have ideas, or if you want to add to this conversation, don't be shy. Please let us know your thoughts and share some of your relationships with us. John and I are planning to have an open mic podcast where you can call in and share your views with us. But at the end of the day, the fact that we are alive and we have families, whether we have families or not, we interact with people at work, in the grocery store, on the street, in the post office. Every single day, we are participating in a relationship, whether we are oblivious or conscious of it. And we hope that your relationships are serving you, that you're enjoying
Serving
them,
you well.
serving you well.
Can I say something?
Sure.
In terms of this open mic thing, can I have like a block list of people that can't call in? Like Sean Flynn or whatever his name is. I don't want him calling in. He's way too handsome, way too intelligent. I feel very threatened by that. He can't call in. I want to put together a block list. Evan, a block list. Marcus, block list. All these people, these names I see popping up on your phone. Rudy. Oh, Rudy is so out. I don't even No, absolutely not.
And John is intimidated by these people. And
Well, anybody
not
that's more
him.
handsome and intelligent than me, of course I'm going to be intimidated by that. That's only
These
normal.
are
Look at me. I'm a mess.
wonderful men in my life.
Look at this stomach.
Where goes-
No woman can find this attractive. I'm disgusting.
He's just about to give birth.
First, you used to tell me I'm month number 3. Now I'm in my last trimester.
John, I hope you will have a safe delivery. Hopefully.
Such an asshole.
You don't want to have a C-section.
In the words of my wife, you're an ass.
I have to say, I echo the words of your wife.
Then I'm an ass?
You are an ass, John.
All right.
And I hope your wife don't take offense to me calling you an ass.
Oh, no, she would cheer you on.
What you are.
Exactly. She would cheer you on, believe me.
And thank you for listening to our 4th segment.
Fifth.
Hopefully, This is our fifth.
Yeah, it's the fifth.
segment.
It's easily to forget,
And
apparently.
hopefully you've enjoyed it and it has somehow resonated with you in some way. And if you have relationships in your life that are not serving you, you don't
Change 'em.
necessarily have to cut them out,
Change them.
but maybe you can put them on vacation.
Modify them, change them, cut them out, or vacate them. Yes.
And we will see you next week with another segment. I think we'll take a break from relationships and bring you a new topic. Maybe the opioid crisis in America.
Oh, that's a serious one, though. We got to do some homework on that, like real research.
And thank you so much again for watching, for listening to us. And we will see you next time.
Good night.
Bye.